The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus said to his disciples, "If the world hates you, remember that it hated me before you. If you belonged to the world would love you as its own. But because you do not belong to the world, because my choice withdrew you from the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the words I said to you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you too. If they keep my word, they will keep yours as well. But it will be on my account that they will do all this, because they do not know the one who sent me." The Gospel of the Lord. Especially today's world, we can use the response of the world to the church as a little bit of a criteria of discernment. If the world loves what we're on about, it probably means that we're not with Christ. And there, let us not be shocked if we're on the other side of the equation, that if the world hates us, then let us be at peace because we are with Christ. As long as we are with Christ. It's not the only criteria, of course. We could be doing some evil things in the church, as we know has happened, the sexual abuse crisis, in which case there is a mutual hatred from the world and from good Catholics towards the evil actions of men who have become perverted in the church. But when it comes to the proclamation of the truth of the gospel, if we are hated by the world, then let us be joyful, because it means that we are with Christ. Just continuing a little bit of the theme that I've had over the last couple of days regarding the reception of Holy Communion. If we are to receive on the hand, then as St. Cyril of Jerusalem explains to us, we should do it in a well and dignified way. And he says that we should make a throne with the right for the left, receive the host in the palm of the left, and with the right take the host and to place it into our mouth. And the reason he describes that is in order that the reception of Holy Communion be done well, and it avoids any possibility of the host falling. And the Church, in fact, does counsel against receiving in the palm of one's hand and then putting the palm up to one's mouth, precisely because as that action goes like that, the host can fall from the hand onto the floor. Much safer to take the hand that is free, hold the host, and place it into one's mouth. And there, at the same time, if we are receiving in the hand, we must check when we take the host, place it in our mouth, that there are no particles or crumbs that remain on our hand. And if there are, we take them and make sure that we consume them so that there can be no danger of profanation. Yes, it's true that receiving in the hand presents a greater risk. But as long as it's managed well and undertaken well, then that risk can be managed in a proper way, in a dignified way. As I've mentioned, and if you haven't heard the previous last day's homilies, you could go back and look at the live stream if you so choose. I've spoken about the preference that the Church has for reception on the tongue. And the reason the Church has practiced that for over 1,000 years in the Latin Rite, and it continues to be the case in the Eastern Rites to this day, most, if not all, of the Eastern Rites require reception on the tongue. The reason the Western Church had this practice was because not only it removed the danger of profanation, it was a reception allied with kneeling that manifest the proper disposition in the body and thereby reflection of the disposition in the soul of how we should be when we come to receive the Lord. Some say, and I mentioned this 2 days ago, that only the consecrated hands can touch the host, and thereby this is the reason why no other hands can touch the host. That is only a discipline of the church that flows out of a true understanding, but it is a discipline that can be modified, and the church has indeed modified it. It is not a doctrine that says that only the consecrated hands of a priest can touch the chalice and the host. It is a discipline, a practice that flows out of a respect and a recognition that the priest's hands are anointed with the chrism oil for the forgiveness of sins and for the consecration of the body and blood of the Lord. But it does not absolutely mean that there is never any situation where lay hands could touch the host. And further, if we are to take the argument that our hands are often dirty or that there are undignified parts of the body or somehow more sinful parts of the body, it is not really a proper argument, because often we sin with our tongue far more than we do with our hand. And strictly speaking, we have been made capable of touching the body of the Lord because it comes into our body by the intention of Christ. The reason the church went to communion on the tongue was because, as I say, it manifested the proper disposition of the Christian in being fed directly by God, the manna from heaven, through the instrumentality of the priest. When we receive food directly into our mouth in the natural life, we're normally a child or we are a person elderly at the end of our life. In both cases, we're very dependent. We are like a child. We are not able to feed ourselves, and thereby we have to open our mouths and let another one feed us. The same thing happens from time to time between lovers. Lovers might feed one another, but once again it's the same thing. We are putting ourselves in a position where we don't think that we will obtain for ourselves the holy food, this mystical bread of life. And that's what receiving on the tongue shows, that this is a food like no other, and we are in a position of receptivity like no other in our life. We allow ourselves to be fed directly into our mouth to show that this is not a cookie or a bit of bread or something that we ordinarily do in our daily life. We place ourselves in this little position on our knees and allow God to feed us through the hands of a priest. And that is why communion on the tongue is the normative and true way in the Western and Latin rite to receive communion. And it remains that way to this day in the law of the church. And we're never told these things. And as I mentioned 2 days ago, communion in the hand was never intended in the Second Vatican Council. It was not mentioned in any of the documents. Those ideas, yes, were around among a few. And Pope Paul VI issued a poll of all the bishops. He asked all the bishops to comment on the possibility of receiving in the hand after the Second Vatican Council in 1968. And the response was pretty much overwhelming. 80% said no. It will lead to a diminution, meaning a lessening of respect in the Blessed Sacrament. It will lead to a loss of faith in the Blessed Sacrament. Then, through disobedience throughout Europe, and then seeping over into Canada and then other English-speaking countries, it became a widespread practice through disobedience. It was never allowed by Rome. And then finally, well, actually, I modify that a little bit. There were experimental allowances allowed in some countries, but then it spread through disobedience unto other countries who did not have those allowances. And then finally, the practice became so widespread that the Vatican allowed each bishop's conference in the world to apply for an indult, which means an allowance in each territorial bishops' conference area where communion in the hand would be allowed if the bishops requested it. One place where it is not allowed still to this day is Israel and the Holy Land, where if one does a pilgrimage there, ordinarily, if we are to follow the laws of the local bishops, we are not allowed to receive in the hand. And yet so many priests, when they lead the pilgrimages, disobey what the local bishops desire in that regard. If we were to strip back all of the extra things we have in the liturgy, all the beauty and the means that we use to point to the sacred mystery. We just said Mass on a rock in a cave, for example, and we just sat around, didn't have the vestments or anything like that, and we said, we have a pure faith, we see Christ and we believe. No need for all the extra accoutrements and all the extra means that we use to beautify the liturgy. Sure, someone could have a pure faith like that, but it wouldn't take long before those who have less of a formation begin to doubt the mystery, and it wouldn't take very long at all for the children to think that this is all just a big made-up mess. We need the external things because we are both soul and body. We have a psychology and a sensitivity. We need these external things to point us to the holy things, not stopping at the beauty and the external practices and the gestures and the architecture of the church, but those are simply means to lead us into the finality of the liturgy. Thereby, we are led to a deeper contemplation and love of God. So whilst the means are only means, and we should not love the means more than the end, they're still necessary to help us pray. If we take away all the means, including the kneeling and the communion on the tongue, we will end up in a mess, and that's exactly what's happened. If we believe the polls in the Western world, up to 50% of Catholics, if not more, up to 70% in some areas, do not believe in the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist. And one of the reasons is the casualness with which we celebrate the Mass and the way in which we've taken away the external practices and gestures which speak to us of the sacredness and the reality of this mystery. In other dioceses, for example, in Palmerston North, with a bad theology, they removed all the kneelers from the churches and said that we don't kneel before God because we're not children anymore. We're a redeemed people, we're the Easter people, we stand. So they will not kneel for communion and they will not kneel for the consecration. My brothers and sisters, no surprise that there are no vocations to the priesthood in the Palmerston North Diocese. No surprise that the churches are empty. No surprise that people no longer believe. When we take away those external things with bad theology, bad ideas, it leads, as the bishop said back in 1968, to a diminution in the faith. And there you've heard me speak on it before. Let us rejoice to enter the practices that the church promotes to us, whilst allowing other legitimate practices, communion in the hand, like I have said. And if we end up loving the means more than the end, like I've said in the two previous days, we will make the mistake of thinking communion in the hand is a sin and a sacrilege, and it's not. It is simply what is best and what is allowable. And my brothers and sisters, let us be in peace and be in the truth on these things and search them out further if we have any more questions. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.